concentration we call diffusion, but they are diffusing slowly. In gases, diffusion occur faster in gases, but in liquid, the diffusion occur slower. So A and B cannot be an answer. Either it can be C or D. But as I mentioned, it is very slow and it is written bold. So which medium the diffusion will be slower? So in liquid, the diffusion will be slower. That's why C is the right answer. In question 2, 25 cm cube of a sample of a dilute hydrochloric acid with different volume of aqueous sodium hydroxide. In each case, student measure the change in temperature to test if the reaction is exothermic. Which piece of apparatus is not needed? So we want a burette is there. A burette can measure like different volumes. So we need a burette. The question is which we don't need. Pipette can measure 25 cm cube, so that is also needed. Thermometer to measure the temperature change. But we don't need a stopwatch or a clock. Why? Because we are not measuring a rate or the speed of the reaction. So that's why B is the right answer. Then question 3, information about solubility of the four substances are there. A student attempt to separate the mixture of these solid using the following method. So what student did? You can, the chat is open. You can also use the chat to state the answer if you understand the question first. So P, Q, R and S are there. P dissolve in water and S also dissolve in water, and Q and R are insoluble. A student attempt to separate the mixture of these solids using a following method. What he did? He add mixture to a beaker of a water and he stir. So when he will stir, what will happen? P and S will dissolve, it will be solution, and Q and R will be insoluble. Then he filter. So when he filter it off, Q and R will left on the filter paper, and through the filtrate, the P and S will pass through. And then he crystallize one of the solid from the filtrate. So he crystallized P and S from the filtrate. Which of the following mixture could not be separated by this method? So if he crystallize one of the solid, so P and S, so we can separate them. So mixture of P and R. P and R are separated because P is soluble, R is insoluble, so it will be separated. The question is which could not be used? Q and P. So Q and P, one is soluble, one is insoluble, separated. But Q and R, both are insoluble. So if both are insoluble, they will left on the filter paper and we cannot separate them from each other. And R and S, R is insoluble, S is soluble. So this technique can be used, but the question is which could not be used to separate. So that was Q and R, as both are insoluble, both will be left on the filter paper. The table shows information about atoms of three different elements. So three different elements and their atoms are shown. What are the values for W, X, Y, and Z? So W is the number of the neutron. How to get a neutron number? The nucleon number minus proton number. So to get W, nucleon number is 35 and proton number is 17. So 35 minus 17, so W will be 18. Then to get X, the nucleon number is also a sum of neutron and proton. So neutron plus proton will give us a nucleon number. 19 neutrons are there, 17 protons are there, so we'll add them. So this X will be 36. So for 1836, so which is 1836, you can clearly see B, one is 18, another one is 36. So other, we can check, like proton number is same as the number of protons, so Y will be 18, and Z, the number of electron For atom, the number of proton is equals to number of electrons, so that's why Z will be 19 as well. So B is the right answer. Metal P react with a non-metal Q to form a compound. So metal and non-metal, whenever metal react with a non-metal, they will form a covalent compound. Which processes take place and which type of compound is formed? So, sorry, metal react with non-metal. By mistake, I said covalent. It should be ionic because metal react with non-metal. I thought two non-metals were there. So they will form ionic compound. And when ionic compound is formed, what will happen? Ionic compounds are formed by transfer of electron. So one will lose electron, another one will gain electron. And metal will lose electron, non-metal will gain electron. So electron from transfer from metal to non-metal, and the type of the compound should be ionic. Covalent compounds are formed by sharing of electron when the two or more non-metals are there. The structure of ethanoic acid is shown. Which diagram show the arrangement of outer electrons? So you have to check. Oxygen belongs to group 6, so it will share 2 electron. Carbon belongs to group 4, so it will share 4 electron, and hydrogen share 1 electron. An unshared electron on oxygen should be 0. Or oxygen should be 2. 4. Oxygen belongs to group 6. So as it belongs to group 6, it will share 2. 2 will be the shared electron and unshared will be 4. So here, what is the mistake here? They did not draw any unshared electron or oxygen. So that's wrong. Here, what is the mistake here? 2 plus 2 plus 1. So 5 unshared electron. That's also wrong. So in C or D, oxygen is correct, but hydrogen, they draw hydrogen unshared electron on hydrogen. That is wrong because hydrogen does not have any unshared electron. So that's why C is the right answer, that oxygen belongs to group 6. So it will share 2 and unshared will be 4 electrons. In question 7, solid X is a solid at room temperature. It's having a high melting point and solid X conduct electricity. So ionic compounds can conduct electricity, but they can conduct electricity in a molten or aqueous state. Cannot conduct electricity in a solid state because ions are not free to move. So this is an ionic compound. This is a structure of the metal. This is a giant covalent. And this one is a simple covalent. Simple covalent cannot conduct, giant covalent cannot conduct except graphite, which is having a layered structure, and ionic compound cannot conduct in solid. So we are left with only metals, as they have delocalized electrons or electrons are free to move, so it can conduct electricity. Benzene is a liquid with a molecular formula of C6H6. Ethene is a gas with a molecular formula of C2H4. Which statement about 1 mole is correct? 1 mole of a substance. Remember, whenever we have a 1 mole of a gas, 1 mole of any gas will occupy 24 dmq. So when we check the statements, 1 mole of a benzene and 1 mole of ethene have the same number of atoms. That is wrong. Because 1 mole of benzene, how many atoms are there? 6 plus. So total number of atoms here, 12 moles of atoms. And here 2 plus 4, so 6 moles of atoms. So they don't have the same number of atoms because 6 plus 6, 12 atoms total, and 2 plus 4, 6 atoms. So they don't have the same number. So A is not the right. 1 mole of a benzene and 1 mole of ethene both occupy 24. That is wrong because liquid, 1 mole of a liquid cannot occupy 24, only 1 mole of a gas occupy 24. That's why this statement is also wrong. If it was only ethene, then it will be right. Both benzene and ethene have the same empirical formula. How to work out empirical formula? Empirical formula shows the simplest ratio. So 6 and 6, the ratio is 1 is to 1. So empirical formula CH. And what is empirical formula of C2H4? So it is 1 is to 2. So CH2. So they don't have the same empirical formula. So we are left with option D, that the number of carbon atoms in half mole of ethene is equal to Avogadro's constant. Avogadro's constant means 1 mole. And you can see here, because the ratio for molecule to atom is 1 is to 2. Like if we have one molecule, C2H5, how many atoms are there of carbon? So if we have one whole molecule of C2H4, it will contain 2 carbon atoms. So if we have 0.5 moles of ethene, how many carbon atoms are there? X. Cross multiply. So we'll get 1 mole. And 1 mole means Avogadro's constant. That's why D is the right answer. Then sodium hydrogen carbonate undergo thermal decomposition or breakdown. What is the maximum mass of sodium carbonate that can be formed from 0.1 mole of sodium hydrogen carbonate? So we have the moles of sodium hydrogen carbonate, like this is sodium hydrogen carbonate, and first we'll get the moles of sodium carbonate by using a ratio. So sodium hydrogen carbonate NaHCO3 and sodium carbonate Na2CO3, the ratio between them is 2 is to 1. So if we have 0.1 moles of sodium hydrogen carbonate, X moles will be there, cross multiply. So X will be equal to 0.1 divided by 2, which is 0.05 moles. But in the question, we need the mass. So from moles, how to get the mass? The formula is moles equal mass in gram divided by molar mass. So how many moles are there? 0.05. Molar mass, we don't know. The mass in gram is also we don't know. And the molar mass, how to get the molar mass of sodium carbonate? You will use a periodic table for this. Use the periodic table. So for sodium carbonate Na2CO3, so sodium is 23 multiplied by 2 atoms, so multiply by 2, plus carbon is 12 plus oxygen is 16 multiplied by 3. So this will be 46 plus 12, 58 plus 48. So this will come out as 106. So 106. So this is 106 is a molar mass, that multiplied by 0.05. So we'll get 10.6 gram of sodium carbonate. So first we use a ratio to get the moles, and from the moles we work out the mass. Which apparatus could be used for electroplating an iron nail with copper? So we want a copper plating. So if you want a copper plating, the anode should be made up of copper, the cathode should be the nail, and the salt, the electrolyte, should be a copper salt. So we want copper plating, we don't want iron plating, so that's why we cannot use this. So anode should be made up of copper, so this is copper, electrolyte contain a copper ion. So when copper ions are attracted, copper atom will go inside the solution as a copper ion. So this nail will have a layer of copper. Why B is wrong? Because the copper ions are positive ion always move towards cathode. So this will not plate the nail. That's why A is the right answer. The diagram shows a simple cell which two metal produce the highest voltage. So if we want to produce the highest voltage or increase the voltage of a cell, we should use two metals which are having a greater difference in the reactivity. So potassium sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc, iron, lead, copper, mercury, silver, gold, and platinum. So we have to check which one having a greater difference. So options which are given here: magnesium and copper, magnesium and copper, magnesium iron, magnesium iron, zinc copper, zinc copper, and the last one is zinc iron, zinc iron. So as you can see, which is having a greater difference in the reactivity. So magnesium and copper have the greater difference in the reactivity. That's why it will produce the highest voltage. So the voltage produced by a cell depends on the difference in the reactivity of the two metals which are used. When anhydrous means copper sulfate which does not contain water, anhydrous copper sulfate is added to water, a solution form, and a heat is given out. So if heat is given out when this reaction occur, what will happen? Which row shows the temperature change and what kind of reaction? Heat is given out, so it is exo. And what happened to the temperature change? The temperature will increase. So D will be the right answer. The energy diagram is shown here as the reactants having less energy and the product is having more energy. So this reaction is endothermic. Reactant having low, the product is having high energy. The minimum possible energy which we need for reaction to occur we call activation, and the energy difference from reactant to product is called energy change. Which statement is not correct for this energy diagram? So when we check the options, it could be energy diagram for reaction when petrol is burned. Burning of a petrol is exothermic, but this diagram is for endothermic because the reactants have low energy and the product is having high. So this cannot be the diagram for burning of a petrol, as it is a combustion reaction and combustion reactions are always exothermic, releases the heat energy. Rate of a reaction between magnesium and excess of hydrochloric acid was followed by measuring a mass of magnesium. When magnesium react with hydrochloric acid, as a result, the mass of magnesium will decrease because the magnesium plus hydrochloric acid gives magnesium chloride plus hydrogen gas. So the magnesium used up, that's why its mass should decrease. So C and D can never be an answer. Why? Because in C and D the mass of magnesium is increasing. If magnesium is used up in a chemical reaction, its mass should decrease. Then we have two reactions, 1 and 2. One is a fast reaction. So in experiment 2, when we check option A, the experiment 2 is fast and experiment 1 is slow. And in option B, experiment 1 is fast and experiment 2 is slow. So both experiment we use the same amount of magnesium, but in experiment 1 the less concentrated than experiment 2. So it means experiment 1 should be slow. So which option? The experiment 1 is slower. So A is the right answer, that experiment 1 is slower than experiment 2. As we decrease the concentration, the number of the collision between the particle decreases, so the rate of the reaction will also decrease. Which statement explained why the coal dust form an explosive mixture with air? So what is the reason why the coal dust instantly catches fire? Because coal dust are fine particles. So when they are fine particles, what they will have large surface area, because small particle size will have a large surface area, and as a result of large surface area, it can easily burn. So coal dust has a large surface area, so it can easily burn, and that's why the mixture of the coal dust as well as with the air is highly explosive. The reversible reaction is there. The following reversible reaction take place in a closed vessel at a constant temperature. when the system has reached equilibrium, more T is added. So if we add more T, where the equilibrium or the balance will shift. So after adding T, which substance increasing? So if we increase the amount of T, equilibrium will shift towards the left hand side. So if the equilibrium shift towards the left hand side, the amount of P, amount of Q and amount of R will increase. So C is the right answer. 4 ionic half equations are shown. Which statement is correct? So for question 17, we have to identify the statements which are correct. So in equation 1, look, copper ion gain electrons. When it gain electron, this is reduction. So in equation 1, copper 2 ions are oxidized. That is wrong, they are reduced. In equation 2, iodide ion loses electron. So when it loses electron, oxidation. But they're saying iodide ion are reduced. That is also wrong. In equation 3, iron 2 ions are oxidized because iron 2 become iron 3. So it is a loss of electron and oxidation is a loss of electron. So C is right answer. What about D? In equation 4, chlorine is oxidized. Chlorine gain electron. When something gain electron, that is reduction. So it's not oxidation, it is reduction. In question 18, germanium oxide is a white powder. Germanium oxide react with hydrochloric acid. Germanium oxide react with sodium hydroxide. So any oxide which can react with both acid and alkali, what is the type of oxide? That is called amphoteric oxide. Amphoteric oxide can react with both acid and alkali and does not dissolve in water. Which type of oxide is germanium? So that is an amphoteric oxide because it can react with both acid and alkali. If it react with acid only, then it is a basic oxide. If it react with base, it is acidic oxide. If it react with both, amphoteric oxide. And if it does not react with any, then it will be a neutral oxide. Hydrogen chloride gas react with water, produce an acidic solution. Which statement describe what happened during the reaction? So what happened? Acid, what is the definition of acid? Acids are proton donor. When substance give out proton or donate proton, we call that substance as acid. So which statement describe what happened? The chloride ions are formed by accepting electron from water. So chloride ions, basically what happens, this HCl loses proton. Proton means H plus, not electron. So it loses proton because that's why after the reaction Cl does not have any proton like hydrogen here, ion here, and water is having 3. So water is accepting, HCl is donating. So chloride ion is formed by accepting electron. That is wrong. Hydrogen chloride loses an electron. That is also wrong. It's not losing electron, it is losing proton, H plus. H plus is called proton. The water accept proton from hydrogen chloride. That's true. This H plus is called a proton and water gain that proton. So C is the right answer. Acids are proton donors and bases are proton acceptor. And water donate proton. Water is not donating proton. Water is accepting proton or hydrogen ion from the HCl. In question 20, apparatus shown is used to prepare copper sulfate. We want to prepare copper salt. So which technique can be used? Copper plus iron sulfate. Can we use this? We cannot use this technique. Why this cannot be used? Copper plus iron sulfate, it won't work. Because copper is less reactive, it will not be able to displace, so there will be no reaction. Copper chloride plus sulfuric acid. This won't work. Why it will not work? Because if we use copper chloride mixed with sulfuric acid, here as you can see, It should, like here, it should form a solid so that we can obtain that mixture, obtain that substance. So copper chloride plus sulfuric acid won't work here, as it will produce, like, all the substance will be aqueous. It does not produce any visible change. Copper oxide plus sulfuric acid, metal oxide like copper oxide plus sulfuric acid, what it produces, metal oxide plus acid gives salt and water. If it's a sulfuric acid, it will give sulfate salt, so it will produce copper sulfate plus water. And what is the appear? So copper sulfate will pass through, and unreacted copper oxide will be left on the filter paper. And the last one, sulfur plus copper, that does not work at all. So to prepare a salt, if you want to prepare a soluble salt, remember there are only, all the reactions of acid can be used to prepare the soluble salt. And what were the reaction? One is metal plus acid, metal oxide plus acid, metal carbonate plus acid, and metal hydroxide plus acid. So these, all the reactions can be used to prepare soluble salt, because copper sulfate, aqueous copper sulfate means soluble salt. That's why option A will not work, option B does not work, option D does not work, only option C, because metal oxide plus acid. So whenever you want to prepare a soluble salt, it will always be metal oxide mixed with acid. So these are the first 20 questions from October-November 2016 paper. Next session I will discuss from 21 till 40.